Welcome back. In the last lecture I discussed about the aerosol as a micronutrients and nutrients, and when they are deposited they will be actually acting as a nutrients to the, especially in the aquatic systems or in the form of even in the soil or in the river or in the ponds. And we also discussed that the impact of industrial emissions. We also discussed that impact of fertilizers that will be giving rise to the, not only the of course one aspect of the pollution, but in the previous lectures I mostly discussed their positive sides, they will be serving as a micronutrients. So, when they are deposited they will be transported to some of these aquatic systems where they can actually impact the their photosynthesis of the plants or the microorganisms that are living in this one, especially algae and phytoplankton, zooplanktons, these things. So, they are really very important, although most of the time we say that aerosols are bad. Yes, of course, they are bad, and the badness actually overweighs the good parts of aerosols. So, yeah, this is very important that we should understand this, but this is how it is works. So, nothing in the world is like everything is positive only, everything has positive and negative mechanisms. So, for example, I am giving a lectures, some of you may like and some of you may dislike actually. So, there is no force mechanism that I can say that okay, this was the best lecture, or I mean it is you have to judge, okay, and you will be judged by the questions that I will be giving and the assignments and then exams that will be conducted. So, everything has a two sides, like a coin has a two sides. So, it has good and bads. So, okay, anyway, let us come to the discussion part of this one. So, in the previous lectures I discussed that okay, there are important nutrients which are the key nutrients which are needed for the photosynthesis, biogeochemistry, and then processes, atmospheric chemistry, and how they are produced, what are their sources, what are their different mechanisms by which they are actually produced and deposited. Now, in these lectures I would like to focus mostly on the aerosol deposition mechanisms. I just gave a very small hint on wet and dry deposition, but in this one we will try to give some numerical questions that how we are actually can calculate. Please do not be afraid, the questions will be very simple, it is just a multiplication. So, do not worry about this, because I am not going to complicate the lectures here. Maybe sometimes if Swayam permits us, we will give some complicated lectures, but not right now. So, do not do not be in the fear, okay, that there will be a very big calculations. Okay. So, welcome. Yeah. So, we talked about in the previous lecture that deposition has two parts. So, whether it is actually the aerosol deposition is actually in the form of either it will be in the form of dry deposition, you can say, and then we have wet deposition. Dry depositions, in the dry depositions particles are directly deposited onto the surface by gravity or turbulence, okay. But most of the time is because of the gravity only, turbulence is putting very less effects on the aerosols deposition, okay. Now, what will happen is as we know that small particles will move primarily through Brownian motion, okay, in the atmosphere, while heavier particles will try to settle due to the gravity. Now, this is very important here, that you need to understand that what is the T critical beyond which it will be actually like Brownian motion, and above which is below which it will be Brownian motion, and under which they will be falling as a gravity. There are lots of things actually. Just assume a simple calculations, because if you do include turbulence and then other atmospheric processes, you will be actually lost. Just see this one, you can always calculate this one, that force, gravity and the force will be m into g, and m into g will be 4 by 3 pi r cube into rho. So, volume into density, okay. And then so this means you can say that actually F gravitational force is actually if I calculate this one, this will be actually proportional to the r cube and then density. So, even if the particle density is very high, if the particle is very big, the density is very low, it will not be deposited, or if the particle size is very small, density is very low. But usually it is very important, because gravity is actually cube power of 3 to the radius. So, the radius impact is more compared to the density. So, you can always see this one, but of course, and then generally atmospheric density is actually taken as a constant. So, although it varies, but we usually take a constant depending on the locations where you are doing the sampling and the aerosol types. This density can vary, but once they are in the atmosphere, we assume that okay, probably in a smaller scale, this density will be constant. So, you can always do this calculation. Then we have a wet deposition. Wet deposition, also known as a wet scavenging, is the process by which atmospheric aerosols fall in the ground through precipitation such as rain or snow. So, this is very important. So, when you have actually rain or snow, during the rain, these particles, for example, you see here, you see here, these are actually clouds and these are aerosol particles here, and when the rain is actually passing through, they will actually try to include these aerosols in the water. Some part of this will be dissolved and part of these aerosols will not be dissolved. Actually, it will be in the remain its undissolved form, or it will not be dissolved. Okay. Then dry deposition, as we said, dry deposition is just because of their gravity. So, they will be actually they will be deposited very close to the source. They will not be transported, because for long range transport you need particles of smaller size. So, and for gravity you need particles of bigger size. So, if the gravity is, if you are considering particles deposition under gravity, this means you have to consider particles with the larger size, and when the particle is of larger size, they will not be transported to the larger distance or longer distance. So, they will be deposited very close. So, here you can see here, like bacteria, VOCs you have pollens here, you have biomass burning, putting lots of smokes here, you can have like sea spray, and then of course air sea gas exchange that can happen. This is the surface of the, you can see here, this is how actually through this one you can see this, they can affect this processes, and then some of them actually nutrients will be actually like oxidizing species, and in presence of snow they will be converted into the aerosols. So, lots of processes will be happening in the atmosphere, and each process has its own importance and its important mechanisms and by which they act. But in this lecture we will be focusing mostly on the dry and wet deposition. Okay. Now, this is very important slides. Generally the acid pH is 7. Okay. So, this is neutral. If the pH is 7, it is neutral. Now, and then the pH water is somewhere very close to 8 or slightly 8.2 or 8.1. Okay, slightly basic. So, it is actually like basic, ocean is slightly basic actually, or sea water is slightly basic. And then during the late 90s, there was a reduced acidity because of the lower atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide is actually like get exchanged with the water. So, water gas is here and then water vapor is there. So, this can be diffused, gas can be diffused here through the diffusion mechanism. So, this diffusion, CO2 diffusion can be there, and this CO2 can go into the system in the seawater, where this is forming actually carbonic acid, and this carbonic acid will release free hydrogen ions H plus. Part of this will be dissociated like bicarbonate ion. Some of this carbonate ion will react with H plus, or the bicarbonate will dissociate into directly either into bicarbonate and 2 H plus, or 1 H plus and 1 bicarbonate. Usually this process is stronger, and then this will be actually this carbonate carbon, this carbonate ion will be taken up, and then if you just measure this one, there will be actually they are abundant in the corals. So, they are very important for healthy corals, and then mollusk and then other marine calcifers which contains calcium, because this carbonate ion is there and then calcium ion is there. This calcium carbonate, they will be taken by the sea plankton, both the carbonate and this will be taken by the these planktons are calcifier species that are there. So, they will take and they will make their skeleton with this one. Okay. Now, assume a situation, this calciferous is actually mostly is actually calcium carbonate, and this is actually, then again just remember this concept will be coming very frequently on and off, basic and acidic. Now, what will happen if you reduce, this was actually happening in the 1800 or so. Now, what is happening situation, you see in 2100, okay, by 2100 it is projected that ocean pH will reduce to somewhere around 7.8 or so, as low as 7.8, and then from 8.2 to reduction to 7.8 will impact hugely. And because what will happen, so by 2100 it is projected that carbon dioxide concentration will increase enormously, and then carbon dioxide concentration will increase. This means this exchange process that I was talking about, this will increase, this process will increase, this process will intensify. So, what will happen once the process is intensified, there will be more exchange of CO2 gas with the seawater, and therefore more of carbonic acid will be formed. This will be more H plus ion will be released in this one, and then bicarbonate ion in this one. So, there will be actually fewer carbonate ions than these ones. And not only that, this is another process. This will also do if there is actually whatever the corals and they were there, actually they will be existed. So, calcium carbonate with the acid, if you add acid, this will actually get dissolved. So, the calciferous elements that were there, actually cells for example or corals, they will be bleached out. So, this process is called dissolved, or they will be bleaching. This is very important. So, this is why increased CO2 concentration is good, but we discussed in the previous lecture on the in terms of regulating the climate and temperature of the Earth's atmosphere, but at the same time it is also very important that they are not good for the ocean biogeochemistry. This will lead to a decrease in the pH of the seawater. This means decrease in the pH of the seawater means you have the seawater will become more acidic, and this means all the calciferous elements that are there, whether they are corals or mollusks or other things that are calciferous, they will be tried to bleach out, or they will be leached, and once they are leached, their life can be actually in dangerous state. So, this process is actually dissolution of carbon dioxide. Dissolution of carbon dioxide lowers the pH, contributing to the ongoing acidification caused primarily by the CO2. So, this process that I explained is actually called ocean acidification, and ocean acidification has been a very pronounced research area. So, for all my those MSc and PhD students, they should pursue research in this areas, that how the deposition of micronutrients on one side increases the productivity, but at the same time the industrial process which increases the CO2 concentration, it is going to decrease the ocean pH. So, it is actually a kind of interconnected mechanisms, the processes are interconnected. So, we need to understand both or all of them properly. Buffering capacity is actually the deposition of strong acids consumes alkalinity. Okay. So, as I said that if you have a strong acid, you add basic is there, so alkalinity will be reduced, further reducing ocean's capacity to neutralize acid input. So, once it is there, once the probably during the start of the pH reduction in the pH will be slow, but once the pH reduces significantly, where the buffering capacity of the seawater or ocean will reduce, this will be becoming more acidic, and this will actually can affect the marine life. So, acidification affects the marine life, calcifying organisms such as corals, shellfish, disrupting and this may disrupt marine ecosystem. So, yeah, this is very important. So, impact of ocean pH on chemistry. Although I discussed these things in a very simpler way, there is a huge complex mechanisms is involved, because this dissolution is not only it is temperature affected, it also affected by the pH of the seawater, and then and the temperature that is there actually. So, if the temperature is usually it is given by the Henry law. Okay. So, you should study these things as well. I think I have discussed this one, that impact on the so one thing that was left actually in the eutrophication. Okay. We discussed actually iron will be actually a simulation of primary production. Okay. And then there are actually HNLC means high nutrients but low chlorophyll, and why it is means there are enough nutrients but the chlorophyll content is very low. For example, Southern Ocean, its deposition can enhance the phytoplankton. So, iron is a limiting nutrients in the high nutrient low chlorophyll regions like Southern Ocean. So, in the Southern Ocean there is actually low chlorophyll, or the growth is not actually adequate. Iron in the Southern Oceans, mostly the iron is one of the very important limiting nutrients, and this region is classified as a HNLC. So, high nutrients low chlorophyll region, and its deposition therefore can enhance the phytoplankton growth. Carbon sequestration, of course, I talked about in details, that how this can enhance the primary production, increases the biological pump, where carbon is sequestered, especially in the form of CO2. This will be sequestered into the deep ocean. So, this is very important. Phosphorus I talked about, promotes the productivity in oligotrophics, means nutrient poor regions. This influences the composition of plankton community, phytoplankton community. So, phosphorus, although I talked in a general way, in the ocean they will actually they will significantly affect the oligotrophic species or oligotrophic regions, which is actually nutrient poor, and then they will influence the phytoplankton's community. Nitrogen, primary productivity, this nitrogen deposition of nitrogen can increase the primary productivity in the nitrogen limited regions, but if there is excess nitrogen deposition, this can lead to the harmful algal bloom and hypoxic zones. This I talked about, and this is not actually very important for other things, but this process is very important for rivers, ponds like this small aquatic system. So, where this water can be stagnant. Okay. Stagnant water is needed, you need high temperature for photochemical activity, and you need high nutrients. So, once they are there, this process will be affected. Then what it will do actually? So, if there will be actually there will acidification, this process will lead to the high CO2 will lead to the ocean acidification. This acidification impact on biota. What kind of effects can be there on the biota? Calcifers like corals, foraminifera or shellfish, because they are mostly made of calcium carbonate, which is basic in nature. They will try to lose their cells, or they will be trying to getting dissolved, and then acidification reduces calcium carbonate saturation, impairing the formation, and then even not only that, they can dissolve the existing ones, but they can also impair the formation of the cells and the skeleton. So, you can have a weak skeleton. It's like because during the for example, our body, when during our growth is there, calcium is needed. If the calcium is not supplied, our bones will not be there, bones will not be formed properly, you can have deformated form kind of bones. Similarly, if because the ocean is acidic in nature, this calcium will not lead to the formation of cells actually. So, because of that one, then cell formation can be hampered, and pre-existing or whatever the existing cells are there, or foraminifera are there, they can be actually dissolved to some extent. Phytoplankton composition, nutrient depositions may favor certain species, potentially disrupting the ecological balance. And food webs, changes in the primary production, species composition refill through the marine food web composition. So, this will be also there. So, regional and global impacts, I have been talking about this one. So, there is actually called HNLC, means high nutrients, low chlorophyll. Here the we said that actually iron is actually deficient here. Iron is actually in the lower concentration. So, if the iron is there, this process can be actually enhanced. So, nitrogen and iron deposition can significantly enhance the productivity. For example, iron fertilization from the dust storms over the southern ocean. So, over the southern ocean, dust storms becomes play a very important role in the ocean biogeochemistry, because they supply lots of nitrogen in this one. And you will not be surprised, there was actually an experiment, Loha-Fex it was called, probably, if I remember, where actually iron was supplied, okay, dissolved iron was supplied to the southern ocean. This was supplied additional, okay. So, supplied to see in the HNLC region, so high nutrient low chlorophyll regions, it was supplied, and then there was a huge research that was conducted that how the productivity was increased. So, that kind of things is there. Nature, just remember, nature does its job very properly, very beautifully, but because we are disrupting the nature, we are changing the nature and its ecosystem, it is going to impact us only. Nobody is going to be impacted. It's we who will be impacted much. So, it is not that the ecosystem of the earth will be, of course, we affect the earth's ecosystem, but at the end we will be affected. Okay. Oligotrophic regions I talked about little bit. Phosphorus and nitrogen deposition boost phytoplankton growth. Example, deposition of biomass burning influencing the Atlantic Ocean. So, over southern ocean, iron is limiting nutrients. Over the Atlantic Ocean, phosphorus is eluting kind of limiting agents. Coastal deposition, excessive nitrogen deposition contribute to the eutrophication, algal bloom and hypoxia. This we will talk about. And for example, Gulf of Mexico, this is defined as also called as a dead zone. And I also talked about this algal bloom and eutrophication in the river Ganga. That happens during the May to June, and at least in the last 3-4 years it has been keep on coming this one. So, yeah, this is very important. Now, this is important that how do we calculate, how we usually calculate this one. The common representation for dry deposition flux is actually written as FD. F means, F stands for flux, D stands for dry deposition, is VD into C, very simple equations. So, where this deposition FD is actually dry deposition flux, means mass per unit area per unit time. So, it depends on what kind of unit you are using for VD and C, the unit of deposition will be there. So, dry deposition velocity, this is actually length per unit time. So, usually generally taken as a meter per second or centimeter per second. So, whatever the concentration you are taking, you can use this one. Then concentration of the pollutants generally reported at microgram per cubic meter. So, you have like this one microgram per cubic meter and you have micro per second. So, this will be actually microgram per meter square per second. So, the deposition flux, unit of deposition flux will be like mass per unit area per unit time. So, this becomes very important. What are the factors that depends on the which will affect the dry deposition? Of course, apart from the concentration, as you can see in this equation, concentration is directly proportional to the concentration. The other factors are actually like VD. So, VD is dry deposition velocity. It will be affected by the surface roughness, kind of how rough the surface is. Aerosol surfaces here we are talking about, the turbulence near the surface, okay, where deposition we are talking about dry deposition. So, if there is turbulence in that one, then it will be affected. Then particle properties like its size and reactivity, because VD will be actually we are talking about the direct deposition. So, direct deposition will be given by the Stokes law. F is equals to 6 pi eta r v. Okay. So, you can calculate from here, and this is actually F is actually like m into g. This means 4 pi 3 pi r cube into rho. So, you can calculate here r will be affected properties that you can calculate the r from here. Actually, one r will be cancelled out, it will be 2 here, and then you can calculate the drag force. If if this force is depositional force is more than this, so then only it will be deposited. So, drag force, if it is more, then this is called drag, D-R-A-G, drag force. So, F drag, if the F drag is smaller than F what you call gravity, because if I use D, D is already there, so it will be confusing. G is because of the gravity. So, if the gravity is higher, then only the dry deposition will take place. So, you can, from these equations you can calculate by that how much deposition and which size can be deposited. Then there are some simple questions. For example, compute a dry deposition flux with a pollutant concentration of 1.5 microgram per cubic meter and dry deposition velocity of 0.1 meter per second. What you have to understand here, this is very important, that you have to take the units must be same. If this is unit is given in per meter cube, then the unit of the dry deposition must be in meter per second. If it is given in the per centimeter cube, then this must be written as centimeter per second, or you have to convert accordingly if the only difference is there. So, you can just calculate this one, like it will be 0.01 into 1.5 into 10 to the power minus 6 gram per meter cube. So, it will be like 1.5 10 to the power minus 8 gram per meter square per second. So, you can calculate this dry deposition flux using these equations. Then wet deposition flux, this is actually represented by FW. W stands for wet here, and then F stands for flux. Here actually it's again the C is actually concentration of the species, and then actually is it was or scavenging coefficient. And this unit of this one is actually per second. Okay. The concentration that is given here, it could be either you are talking about in the microgram per unit volume, gram per meter cube. Okay. So, you can just see here, if it is the concentration mass per unit volume, then this unit will not be actually gram per meter square per second. I am sorry, I did not check this one. So, these equations may be because it is actually like okay, let me see this one, scavenging coefficient is per second. So, there should be another term in here, because otherwise you will not get the microgram per centimeter square per second, or it will be, I have to see this one. So, okay, so just give me some time, I will see this one. And then this scavenging effect will be defined by the precipitation intensity. If the intensity is higher, there can be high deposition, and then particle size, solubility of the gas or particles in the water. So, if it is whether the particle is soluble in the gas or not, that is also important. So, for example, see here the concentration is given in 2 microgram per cubic meter, A is given as 2 into 10 to the power minus 5 per second. Yeah. So, this is again there is actually some mistakes here, because the unit will not be actually gram per meter square. So, one unit is actually microgram per meter cube, and then unit is per second. So, this should give microgram per meter cube per second. So, this deposition flux should be something like that, but it is not actually. So, maybe I have to see this one. Okay, I will see this calculation. So, of course, the calculation is simple, but the units will be changed. So, I just have to recheck whether the unit of scavenging effect is same or not. And when we discuss about the both they are significant, the total deposition you can calculate by just summing up these two. In general cases, places where there is a actually rainfall throughout the year, this FW is greater than FD, because dry depositions only plays very important role for the bigger particles, and therefore this only, for example cases like dust storm. If you have a very strong dust storm, this can be actually doing, otherwise most of the time it doesn't happen. So yeah, this is actually, and then you can calculate, there are equations that you can calculate FD to F total. This is also becomes very important, that how much they are contributing actually, and whether this is actually which one is more prevalent. So whether the dry deposition is more prevalent or not. There are lots of research on this topic. So I'll stop here, and I think in this lecture we discussed dry and wet deposition in details. The equations that we use for the calculation of dry deposition. So it will be very important for all of you. Just practice some questions. Maybe all the research scholars must now, for the research scholars and MSc students, they should see the research is not on the very simple things actually. This is, you have to see that how the particle, because for example I just give the deposition velocity, very simple VD, it is not, it depends on the particle size. So if you have to see the particle size distribution, what is the distribution of the particle size, and then accordingly you have to calculate that composition of the dry deposition. So yes, this is very important, and then calculate dry deposition and wet deposition, their ratios, whether it is significant or not. So this kind of research should be done for MSc and PhD students, and this is really a very important topic for the research, and not much has been done in India. So there is a huge scope if you continue to do research there. So thank you so much, take care, and then bye bye. We will meet in the next lectures. So till then, keep reading, enjoying the lectures, and trying to learn as much as possible.